Tune into ESG Matters with Risk Insights, where we explore ESG with impact.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of ESG Matters with Risk Insights. I'm your host, Dr. Anushka Bogdanov. There's a great deal happening in the world, and the dynamics around sustainability, geopolitics, technology, climate, governance, and global capital markets continue to change at extraordinary speed. I would also like to begin by thanking everyone who supported this channel and expressed an interest in contributing to our conversations. Over the next few weeks, we will be joined by several speakers who will share their perspectives, expertise, and opinions on ESG, sustainability, and what I describe as the interconnected pillars of our future: the planet, people, prosperity, principles of governance, and peace. Before turning to today's discussion, a brief update on my own circumstances. The sanctions imposed on me remain subject to ongoing governance, disclosure, and regulatory questions that have been raised with relevant institutions both locally and internationally. These matters remain in flux. ESG GPS and A-Cube for Africa is now being made available through the Rwanda Stock Exchange so that subscribers can continue to access African ESG data and prepare for some of the most significant risks and opportunities facing humanity and the capital markets. These include climate risk, sustainable development, stakeholder value creation, natural capital management, the global energy transition, and transparent data disclosure that enables non-financial risks to be measured, modeled, and ultimately stress-tested more effectively. This brings me to an issue that I believe is fundamental to Africa's future: data ownership. Without credible, independent, and locally generated and curated data, Africa risks continuing to rely excessively on imported technologies, methodologies, and risk frameworks developed for economies and markets that may be fundamentally different from our own. I recently heard an executive make a statement that stayed with me, that in Africa, we too often position ourselves as intermediaries, distributing, implementing, and selling technologies developed elsewhere, rather than investing sufficiently in building, protecting, and owning our own. But without ownership and control of our own data, our ability to participate meaningfully in decisions about our future remains vulnerable. I believe this raises an important question. If we do not develop our own technologies, build our own intellectual property, and retain and protect the ownership of our own data, how do we ensure that Africa participates in shaping the global economy rather than simply consuming what others have created? This is not an argument against international collaboration. Collaboration is essential, but requires Africa to develop its own capabilities, knowledge, data, and technology to be at that table. Africa is not a single country, economy, or culture. It is a continent of extraordinary diversity, vast natural resources, significant human capability, and expanding markets with enormous potential. Data strengthens the ability for us to negotiate and determine our own approach to sustainability, credit risk, liquidity risk, natural capital, sustainable finance, and strategic economic positioning. ESG data is not simply point-in-time accounting, or merely a reporting exercise or a collection of numbers for an annual sustainability report. ESG data should provide strategic intelligence about the future. Let me extend my apology to humans affected by the ongoing conflicts across the Middle East, Africa, Russia, and other parts of the world. Whatever our political perspectives may be, the continued loss of human life and the destruction of communities should concern all of us. Leadership carries responsibility. When decisions result in the destruction of people, communities, infrastructure, and natural ecosystems, questions of accountability cannot simply disappear. And this is where I believe we need to broaden our understanding of ESG. War is an ESG issue. Climate change is an ESG issue. Food security is an ESG issue. Artificial intelligence is an ESG issue. Migration is an ESG issue. Energy security is an ESG issue. Governance, trust, and accountability are ESG issues. We continue to witness extreme weather events and climate related risks affecting infrastructure, food systems, water security, public health, economies, and communities across the world. Heat waves, floods, droughts, and other natural disasters are creating significant economic and social consequences. At the same time, military conflicts are affecting not only people and infrastructure, but potentially oceans, ecosystems, biodiversity, and natural resources. We have a responsibility to future generations and civilization. And we have a responsibility to protect the planet on which our economies, societies, and ultimately our survival depend. While all of this is happening, another major transformation is taking place. Artificial intelligence is rapidly changing the global economy. But the advancement of AI has moved faster than many of our governance systems, legal frameworks, labor markets, and education systems. And once again, we must ask the question, who owns the technology? Who owns the data? Who determines the rules? And who ultimately captures the economic value? This creates significant questions around data security, privacy, labor displacement, intellectual property, national security, and economic competitiveness. Many countries in both the developed and the developing world have not adequately prepared their labor markets or education systems for the speed of this technological change. What skills will we need in 2 years? What jobs will change in 5 years? What industries could fundamentally transform over the next decade? Every sector of the global economy is already being affected by artificial intelligence, and this transformation is only accelerating. Another major challenge facing the world is migration. Across several countries, debates around documented and undocumented migration have intensified. These debates are frequently driven by legitimate concerns about national security, employment, pressure on public services, and economic insecurity. But migration is an extremely complex issue. We should be cautious that public debates about migration do not prevent societies from addressing deeper structural problems such as corruption, inequality, unemployment, failures in public administration, weaknesses in governance, and declining trust in institutions. The danger arises when complex migration challenges are reduced to simple political narratives, while deeper structural problems remain unresolved. Good governance requires us to examine root causes rather than simply reacting to symptoms. The recent geopolitical tensions and conflicts involving Iran and Israel are forcing the world to reconsider alliances, energy strategies, supply chains, and long-term economic security. Can international institutions maintain legitimacy if principles and rules are perceived to be applied inconsistently? And perhaps, most importantly, we are questioning what has happened to trust. Today, trust in governments, corporations, institutions, and international organizations are increasingly under pressure. Once again, these are not separate from ESG. They are at the very center of ESG. Another issue that deserves greater discussion is the future of food. Technological innovation is transforming agriculture and food production, including the development of cultivated or lab-grown meat and seafood. These technologies may create opportunities to address food security, environmental pressures, and changing global demand. But they also raise important questions about health, safety, regulation, transparency, consumer confidence, and longer-term impacts. Food security is becoming increasingly connected to national security. Countries and organizations are paying closer attention to where food comes from. How is it produced? what chemicals or technologies are involved in production, and the resilience of the global food supply chains. So, when we look at everything that is happening around us, climate change, war, artificial intelligence, migration, energy security, food security, natural capital, and declining institutional trust, we begin to understand something very important. ESG is not a report or a score, and it is not a marketing campaign. ESG is about understanding the interconnected risks that determine the future of our economies, our societies, and our planet. And perhaps the greatest risk of all is continuing to address these challenges in isolation. Climate risks affect food security. Food security affects migration. Migration affects political stability. Political stability affects investments. Energy security affects economic competitiveness. Artificial intelligence affects employment. Employment affects social stability. Governance affects all of them. And the world is interconnected. Our risks are interconnected. Therefore, our solutions must also be interconnected. For Africa, this creates both enormous risks and extraordinary opportunities. But we must participate in building the systems that will shape our future. We must build our own technologies. We must develop our own intellectual property. And we must protect our own natural resources. But most importantly, we must invest in our people. We must ensure that Africa has a meaningful seat at the tables where decisions about global sustainability, technology, finance, and governance are being made. The world has already changed. The real question is whether our institutions, our leaders, our companies, and our societies are prepared for this change. The planet does not operate in silos. Neither should our risk models. Over the coming weeks, I look forward to welcoming a number of guests to the channel and expanding these conversations. Until next time, thank you for listening. Ciao for now.